So, Edmund Gettier, last lecture of the week 12 lectures. Edmund Gettier, born 1927, still alive. He is a notable name in epistemology in particular and philosophy in general. And this he is notable for especially the fact that he only wrote and published one paper. Right? One paper that overnight transformed, turned nearly 2.5 millennia's worth of belief, right, about the nature of knowledge on its head. Moreover, he did this in the space of 2.5 pages. Right? So here's how the story goes. 1963, young Edmund Gettier was teaching at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan, one of the top research institutions for philosophy at the time, and still remains a very high regarded undergraduate institution. If you want to do work in formal epistemology, it's also still pretty highly regarded. And he was a brilliant young junior faculty member, but even back in the 1960s, the whole academic culture of publish or perish was a thing, and young Gettier had not published anything. Right? And since he hadn't published anything, he couldn't get tenure. Right? And this was of great concern to his fellow faculty members, who just kept encouraging him to publish one thing. If he could publish one thing, they'd grant him tenure. He was that well loved. And so finally they wore him down, and he wrote a paper, right, wherein he overturned the classical analysis of knowledge, right, using 2 simple rules of logic. Right. This fucker. Right. So the 2 rules of logic, right, are addition and simplification. Now, the rule of addition for logic is basically just what it's is for very similar, at least, with the rule of addition for mathematics. Right. So for any assumed proposition P, right, we can conclude either P or Q. Right. We can add the element Q, right, in the form of a disjunction. Right. So let's say Matt teaches philosophy, or Matt teaches psychology. Right. So the assumed proposition is Matt teaches philosophy. This is true. All right. Matt teaches philosophy, or Matt teaches psychology. This is also true, because for a disjunction to be true, only one of the 2 disjuncts needs to be true. And I do teach philosophy. All right. Simplification is where you take any conjunction, right, any conjunctive statement, P and Q, and you can simplify it down to just one of its 2 elements, P or Q. Right. So for the conjunctive statement, Matt teaches philosophy and rock climbs. Right. Okay. We can just conclude Matt teaches philosophy, or we can just conclude Matt rock climbs. Right. So long as both members of the initial conjunction are true, right? So if the conjunctive statement is true, then either member on its own is also true. All right. So from these 2 rules, Gettier came up with an analysis that showed that justified true belief is not sufficient as a definition of knowledge. So we'll give you 2 examples that sort of show how this undermines the notion of justification. Right. Example 1 is called the barn facade example. Right. Here's how it goes. So driving through a county full of fake barns, you believe that all the fake barns are real, and that and the one true barn is also real. Right? You are justified in believing that all the barns are real, since all you can see of it, since you have no reason to believe that, there would be a whole county full of fake barns. Right? But because you believe that the fake barns are real, right, your justification for the one true barn is also just supposition. Right? It's not knowledge. Right? In any other case, you would be perfectly justified in believing that all the barns are real. Right? But you're going through fake barn counting. Right? It's backed by belief, that your common experience is, oh, if there's a front wall, if there's three walls, there's a fourth one, all the barns are real. Right? That's just common sense, common experience. Right? It's fully justified by previous experience. Right? Uh, but you have a whole bunch of false beliefs and one belief that happens to be true in this case. Right? The true one in this case is the outlier. It's all just based off of supposition. You haven't done enough to justify truly that each and every barn is real. Right? So the beliefs are backed by unsupported, or the beliefs are unsupported by reality. Right? Namely, that all the barns are real, not just the one. Right? So you don't have the individual belief. Right? So the way it goes is, this barn is real, 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 and this barn is real. But of those 10 barns that you thought were real, right, the conjunction, only one is. And since it's a conjunctive statement, which takes the form of all the barns in Fake Barn County are real barns, right? Since only one actually is, it's a false belief. Right? Your justification is not strong enough. All right. So the other example of this is going to be called Tom Grabbit. Right? So in the Tom Grabbit case, you are a librarian, right, who sees Tom Grabbit, a known convicted thief, right, and you see him steal a very valuable book from the library. And you call the library police. It's a special unit that's very, very quiet and knows how to, make sure that the people that they're arresting stay quiet too, so that they don't disturb other library patrons. It's a very good thing, and we all need more library police. Right? So the library police come and they march quietly, and they take down Tom Grabbit quietly, and they take him to the library jail. Which is also where you go if you don't pay your overdue library fees. But that's another matter. Right? So they catch Grabbit, and you see him get taken off to the library jail, and they hold a trial. Right? Not immediately after, like a week later, they hold a trial for Tom Grabbit. Right? At this trial, for whatever reason, you're not called to be a witness, despite being the only or chief witness in this case. Right? And so you're not at the trial, you're at work, right? Catching other library thieves. Right? But at this trial, Tom Grabbit's mother testifies against him and says that it was his identical twin brother, Buck Grabbit, who had stolen it, the book. This doesn't make any sense because Buck is the model citizen, right? He volunteers for the firefighter force, has done since he was 8 years old, and all he could do was carry a bucket full of water, right? He feeds the orphans every Sunday, and and so on and so forth, right? And it's just the kindest person ever. You can't imagine Buck doing this, right? But then, his father comes up, also testifies, and says that, no, my wife perjured herself, right? She was just trying to protect Tom. right? She loves the poor fool dearly, but the boy needs to own up to his crimes and learn from his mistakes, right? And I know that it could not have been Buck because Buck was with me fishing, as we do every Friday, so that every first Friday, so that we would have food for the monthly potluck. And so his mom perjured herself. It's Tom, right, who did this. Right? In this case, if knowledge requires justification, right, and your justification can be undermined in such a way, like this was, right? Um, what happened is you knew X to be the case, that Tom Gravitt stole the book, but then his mom provides some semblance of undercuts your justification for it, right? Oh, it wasn't Tom, it was Buck. Undercuts it, and so your knowledge kind of blinkers out of existence, only for the dad to come along and reaffirm the justification, right? Re-strengthen it with his own testimony. And this seems to go against the way that we think knowledge should be. If we have sufficient justification, there shouldn't be a way for knowledge to be to blink out of existence. Knowledge shouldn't be a temporary thing. Right? Either we know it or we don't. Right? Our justification has to be sure enough that it can't be undercut. Right? So this is an example of what's known as a defeater. Right? Extra facts or evidence that, if known, would undermine or defeat one's justification for knowledge. Right? And the existence of defeaters seems to undermine the very notion of knowledge itself, or at least the classical analysis of knowledge. So we need a modified account that at least incorporates some fourth element for the classical analysis of knowledge. Right? Classical analysis of knowledge, to reiterate, we got from Plato. And it says that a subject, a person, only knows a proposition, P, if and only if three conditions are met, right? One, the proposition is true. Two, the subject believes that proposition. And three, the subject is justified in believing that proposition. But we've shown that while these might be necessary conditions, they're not truly sufficient. Right? We need at least one further condition. Right? In this case, at minimum, it needs to be something like there are no defeaters to thwart S's justification for P, right? Or a person's justification for a proposition. So this leaves knowledge in kind of a nebulous area that we're still trying to pin down. And one of the strengths of the reliabilist position is that it says, well, as long as it's reliably produced, and we can discuss all the different ways in which we can talk about reliably produced knowledge, right? It doesn't need to be simple. It can be messy. It probably, in reality, knowledge probably is messy, justification especially. And for this, we can come up with a whole host of different ways of talking about reliability. So at the very least, we need some fourth condition, possibly a fifth one, to get to a good definition of knowledge.